Good afternoon and welcome to episode 7 of our series on how to build a data platform. And I appreciate that it has been nearly 8 months. But as you can see, circumstances slightly overtook me, but we are so back to complete this series. And today, once I've gotten rid of the small child, we're going to talk about data pipelines. Now that that's out of the way, forgive me for a little housekeeping. This is a series on how to build a data platform. It is an accompanying series to our guide, which you can download from the link in the comments, which is the self-same thing, how to build a data platform. We are Oakland, we are a data consultancy, we deal in everything data. You should like, you should comment, you should subscribe to this video and this channel if this kind of thing is informative to you. What we're going to deal with today then is we are going to look at data pipelines. And again, 8 months have passed, so forgive me if I'm a little rusty in remembering all of the things that we were doing together. But we have got a data platform. So you will remember from the very first episode that we build out these objects so that we can make evidence-driven decisions. And so far, we have had data platform, which I think has been in blue, and we have had source systems of data that live out here. So you are an enterprise that has lots and lots of data that lives out over here. And this can be all kinds of things. This can be transactional data from your credit card processors. It can be billing data. It can be telemetry data from all of the loggers and things that you have around all of your manufacturing sites. It can be kind of anything you like. And we are going to take that data, we're going to ingest it into our data platform, and then we are going to serve it out to our end business users, who I think we're in green. Review the tapes for me and tell me if I'm right, would you? But I think our end business users were out here in green. And this data that we have moved through our platform will help them make better business decisions and, in the end, make more money. What we're going to deal with today then is this crunchy process, this bit here. How is it that we get data from all the way out here on the edge through our data platform and out to our business user? To do that, you're going to need yourself a data pipeline. The way that we're going to talk through this is we're going to think about this in 3 different sections. First of all, we're going to look at what a data pipeline even is from a sort of philosophical standpoint. Then we're going to have a little bit of a chat about some of the tooling that you might use to run your data pipeline. And then finally, we're going to look at some of the best practices that you should be implementing if you choose to build a data pipeline for yourself. So starting from a blank slate, we can think of our data pipeline as a set of processes. You might load your data out of some kind of database, and then you might copy that data over to an analytical database, and then you might transform that data to add some features that you need for some kind of machine learning model, and then you might serve that out to end users in a Power BI dashboard. And meantime, you've got all kinds of things like alerting and monitoring and logging. And very soon you wind up with this kind of flow chart, or, as the experts say, a directed acyclic graph, or DAG, which is just a fancy way of saying a whole load of boxes and arrows that don't necessarily join up. It doesn't matter, okay? But the word DAG is going to come back to haunt us when we talk about tooling, because people like to refer to the DAG. And so we should at least have passing familiarity with what is going on. Fundamentally, though, there are 3 things that we need to pay attention to. We need to pay attention to extracting, we need to pay attention to loading, and we need to pay attention to transforming your data. These 3 things are generally known as E, L, and T, and the order in which you do them is important. And this is a design decision that you're going to have to make reasonably early on. You are going to have to decide, are you going to be a data platform that in general follows the ELT framework, where you extract, load, and then transform, or are you going to be a framework that extracts, transforms, and then loads, so ETL? So the classic framework is ETL, extract, transform, load. And in this framework, what you do is you take data from your source system and you extract it out, and then you transform it on the way to its final destination. So this might be where you have some process that looks at a SQL box that's in a warehouse somewhere that contains data about some kind of manufacturing process. Let's say that's here. And you have some computer in the middle, some computing process. That could be a server, it could be serverless. It doesn't really matter. But what you do is you take the data out of this, and on the way to its final destination, you do some transformations. Here is the E, the T happens here, and then the load happens in the final analytic destination over here. This is the database that forms the majority of your data platform. This is the database that people will query. This is where your data model happens. This is where your data scientists grab data from to make their nice predictions. This is where your end business users plug things into. Here you have an ETL. Now, this is the pretty classic way of having your data flow through your data pipelines. And the reason that this is the fairly classic way is that you don't store your source data elsewhere. You've only got one copy of that, and that lives down here. Our modern recommendation, and in fact the way in which most modern data pipelines are made, is to switch this up a bit. And it's actually to do extract, load, and then transform. So we are going to skip this process of transforming on the fly. And the first thing that we do is we look at our source data out here. And the first thing we do is we load it into our data platform. So we extract it here, we load it into our data platform, and then we transform it into an analytical database that people can actually query. And the reason that this is favored now is because storage is extremely cheap. And this allows us to muck about with these transformations and not have to worry about what this looks like down here. We can focus on finessing things up here because we've got a copy of the source data, rather than spending our time worrying about storage costs. And even better, now we have things like lakehouses and columnar data stores like Parquet files, and Fabric has come along and transformed this space as well by looking at mirrors of data and things like that. But now that we have these incredibly efficient ways of storing data and manipulating it, it's much quicker and much more convenient to do ELT. Oh, for the pedants at the back, some people, and by some people, these are people who we might snurp our nose at. Some people like to add on an extra couple of steps at the end here, because if you're being really, really pedantic, you can think about this as extract, load, transform, and then if you have something like a Power BI service or a Tableau service that relies on a semantic model that's stored somewhere else, you actually have an extra EL step there, where you take your transform data and then you extract and load that to some third place. And so you get pipelines that people describe as ELTEL. I find that a little bit of a mouthful, and in general, it takes us beyond the pedantry event horizon into a world where you're just like, okay, well, yeah, but that's all dependent on the tooling and everything that exists out here. So can we just agree that we're just going to call this an ELT pipeline? So now that we've thought philosophically about what even is a data pipeline, which I'm not sure you thought that you were going to get yourself into today, but now that we've thought philosophically about that, let's get down to brass tacks and talk about how you might actually do it. Now, if you've got a very simple case, so we'll come back to our classic data platform that we had, which is made of boxes on a whiteboard. If you have an extraordinarily simple case, you can probably get by with cron jobs and code. If you have like one database out here that you just daily need to take a snapshot of and move it into your data platform, and then do some kind of manipulation to it, and then serve it out to your end user on a Power BI platform. PBI, and here's our end user who's looking very, very happy because they have this daily refresh. You can probably get away with all of this happening on some kind of cron job, some kind of auto-timed job that exists on something like an Azure function or an AWS Lambda piece of serverless architecture. You can probably get away with that, and that's completely fine, totally valid. You have got yourself a grade A data pipeline, which is using the simplest possible case And so you'll be able to very easily maintain it and everybody will go home happy. However, this will very quickly break down at scale. And for most enterprise users, they don't have one piece of data out here that needs refreshing daily. They have a madness, an architecture out here that looks like chaos, and it needs ordering somehow into a data platform at all different refresh rates and different resolutions and different data types, and it needs dealing with and then serving. And so you are going to need yourself some kind of orchestrator, because you have hundreds and hundreds of potential data pipelines that are flying their way through your data platform. And so you need to be able to think about these not as individual components, but you want to be able to orchestrate them at scale. Now, the granddaddy of all orchestration tools is Apache Airflow. It allows you to schedule and orchestrate Python jobs at effectively infinite scale. And you can do all the normal and good things that you might want to do. Like you can monitor them, you can stop them and start them, you can schedule them when you want, you can have error conditions, you can do, if this pipeline fails, then kick off 2 more that do something else. You can basically infinitely scale Apache Airflow. However, it's getting a little bit old now, and there are potentially better alternatives that are less difficult to set up. Depending on your flavor of data platform will depend on what kind of tool you pick. If you are in Fabric, the obvious thing to pick is Fabric Data Factory, because it's right there, it's plugged into the platform that you have chosen. Likewise, if you're on Azure, then Azure Data Factory, which is a slightly different flavor of Data Factory. We'll get into it another time if this is of interest to you. In fact, if all of these tools are of interest to you, then you should comment down below, because tool choice at this point is quite personal to you as to what your data platform looks like. Because if you're in Databricks, say, you might choose to run Databricks jobs and orchestrate them using some kind of master notebook inside Databricks that orchestrates all of those jobs, and you can look at them inside the portal and you can scale them using that kind of carry-on. You might have Snowflake, which has its own orchestrators. You might need lots and lots of ELT connectors, so something like Fivetran is where you should be looking. You might want to do data quality tests on the fly, so DBT, especially if you're a SQL house, is what you should be looking at that point. But broadly, we can think about these tools in 2 separate ways. If you have a lot of very complicated pipelines that need very complex logic, then you should be looking at something like Dagster or Prefect, because these allow you to orchestrate code. If you need data to move reliably from one system to another, and it's actually not that hard what you're doing, but what you're doing is massively scaled, then you'll want a low or a no-code solution where you've got that repeatability and you've got that safety net of somebody else having designed the platform for you. So there you're looking at something like Fivetran, or you're looking at something like Airbyte, which is an open source implementation of some of the other tools that we've been talking about, or you might be looking at something like Azure Data Factory. It is worth a final word on reverse ETL. I know it sounds mad, because reverse ETL is not LTE. It basically just means tools that have the capacity to write back to source systems. So you might have something like HubSpot out here, which is a big marketing tool that allows you to track leads and email campaigns and clicks on websites and all sorts of things that are interesting to your marketing department. But people read HubSpot and use it instead of other dashboarding things that you might have out here. And so you need to actually push data back to the source system through a procedure that people quite vexingly call reverse ETL. And if that's something that you need, then there are, again, specialist tools you should be reaching out to in order to be able to do that. It is worth a final word on best practices for data pipelines. You want reliable pipelines that fail gracefully. So you want to be able to have retries and alerting if your pipeline fails. You want to be able to have logic that allows other pipelines to kick off if one fails. So you want to be able to fail in one way and then go, oh, hang on a minute, let's kick off another pipeline in order to try to get the data in a different way. You might want a circuit breaker in your data pipeline. So let's say that you have some machine learning process that relies on a daily refresh of data in order to train on the latest data. You don't want it to train on stale data if your data pipeline breaks. So you want a circuit breaker at that point to let the algorithms downstream of it know, hey, today is not the day to be training because we haven't got you the daily refresh and update. You want version control for rollback. So Git integration is basically mandatory for all the data pipeline work that you can do, so that if you make a breaking change to your data pipeline, you can roll back to an earlier version. In terms of your pipeline steps, they should be as small as possible. It is better to have a pipeline made of lots and lots of repeatable, small, robust steps than one that's made of one big process that's basically impossible to debug or test. Speaking of testing, you want to design your pipeline steps to be testable independent of the other ones. You don't want to find yourself in a situation where one part of a pipeline has broken, but it's actually a 2-hour process, and you have to run the entire 2-hour process to test whether or not that one little step has broken. If you have multiple pipelines in multiple environments, you want to be doing parameterisation. You will almost certainly have a dev environment and a prod environment, and you should maybe have a test environment in the middle. And the way that you parameterize your pipelines from one to the next should not be hard-coded. It should be dependent on some parameterized variables that you store in some kind of configuration file. You definitely want data quality tests. You should be adding data quality tests to your pipeline because your pipeline can break in novel and unexpected ways that you did not anticipate. And one of those novel and unexpected ways is that you just start piping garbage through your data platform. And you don't want your pipeline to think that everything's A-OK because it is moving data, but that data happens to be total rubbish. And finally, you want to add timeouts to your tasks. A lot of these tools you pay by the second, or you pay by the processor cycle for moving the data from here to there. And so if a task is set and it just breaks and spins forever and ever and ever, it's going to rack you up a heck of a bill, and you are going to have to pay for nothing having actually happened in your data platform. And so you want to add timeouts to the steps in your data pipelines. Which brings us to the end of episode 7 on how to build a data platform. Remember that this is the accompanying video series to the guide, which will be linked down in the description below. My name has been MLG, and for other episodes in this playlist, you should click, I think here, we're going to do the thing that YouTubers do when there's a vain hope that there might be a link right here for you to click on in order to access the rest of this playlist. But in case that there wasn't, then you can find the playlist on our channel. Please comment and tell us what kind of videos you would like to see next, because next time we are going to talk about the T in ELT. We're going to talk transformations. We're going to talk Python. We're going to talk SQL. We're going to talk what transformations you should be doing, when you should be doing them. For now, though, I have been MLG, and I shall see you in a week for episode 8.